So now going back to the stomach and the duodenum, remember right between those two is the pyloric sphincter. So the duodenum is the first section of our small intestine, and our intestinal tract is all one big long tube. And all that changes are the histologic layers. So every segment of the intestines has a different function. And so the walls of these organs are going to change. So the duodenum is, you're not going to be able to tell where the duodenum ends and the jejunum begins. But if you were looking under a microscope, you would see a difference in the layers of the walls. So the duodenum is connected to the stomach. It gives way to the jejunum, and then it finally ends up in the ileum. And the ileum is going to dump into the beginning of the large intestine, or what's called the cecum. So know that the ileum is where the small intestine is going to turn into the large intestine. So there are a couple of accessory organs that are going to dump into the duodenum. So the liver is producing bile, which helps digest fats, and the pancreas is producing what's called pancreatic juice. And both the bile and the pancreatic juice, need to enter into the duodenum somehow. So let's look at a little bit closer view of what that looks like. So here is a picture of the beginning of the duodenum. This is the pancreas here. So we're missing our liver up here and our stomach. So there is a tube that is coming from the liver and the gallbladder that is called the common bile duct. And there is a duct coming from, there's actually a couple of them coming from the pancreas, but this biggest one is called the main pancreatic duct. And it's going to empty the pancreatic juice into the duodenum. So these two tubes merge together, and where they enter into the duodenum, so on the outside of the duodenal wall, is called the hepatopancreatic ampulla. So it tells you that hepatic coming from the liver, pancreatic coming from the pancreas. And they form this little, it's not really, it just feels like a little hardened area in the wall of the duodenum. And then where these two empty into the lumen of the duodenum is called the major duodenal papilla. So if you're looking on the inside wall of the duodenum, where the juices come in is the major duodenal papilla. So make sure you know the difference between the hepatopancreatic ampulla and the major duodenal papilla. So the inside wall of the small intestine has an interesting feature. So if you remember, the stomach had the gastric folds or the gastric rugae. The inside wall of the small intestine has what are these called these circular folds. And they're just these ridges inside the small intestine. So if you were to look at these under a microscope, you would actually see there's ridges on top of ridges. And so it increases the surface area by millions of times, which allows for increased absorption of nutrients from the small intestine. So that's what's happening in the small intestine is the bolus, or the little chunk of food that you swallow, is going to turn into what's called chyme in the small intestine, where the nutrients are being pulled out. And you also have some white blood cells, patches of white blood cells in here, that are going to pick up on any pathogens that are flowing through your digestive system. So this is the esophagus, this is the cardiac sphincter, or the inferior esophageal sphincter, and then the different parts of the stomach, the pylorus, the pyloric sphincter, and then this is the duodenum. So what you can't see right here is this is the pancreas, and there's the common bile duct, and you could actually see on this model where the two merge together to form the hepatopancreatic ampulla on the outside of the duodenum, and then on the inside of the duodenal wall, you can see the major duodenal papilla. You can also see the circular folds in the duodenum, and just FYI, the jejunum and the ileum also have those circular folds. You can kind of see it right here on this model. This particular model also shows the greater omentum. If you see something strange up here by this transverse colon, it might be the greater omentum. I'll have to take a look at the model and the quizzes. And then the ileum right here is going to give way into the colon. But let me show you one more model really quick. So we may have a model similar to this. Here is the pancreas. This is the gallbladder up here. So this is the liver would be up here. So the main pancreatic duct would be the number 9 in this picture. And the common bile duct is this, or sorry, yes, common bile duct would be the number 7 here. And the two will merge together, and where this 10 is at is where the the hepatopancreatic ampulla would be. So 10 here is the hepatopancreatic ampulla. And then where it dumps into the duodenum on the inside is the major duodenal papilla. So those are the things that you would need to know off of this model. You can also see on this model there's vasculature to the spleen. This is the spleen over here. It's not a kidney. The kidneys are back behind it. So I've seen that asked on this question before, these vessels over here that feed into the spleen. And then table 11-7, we're going to be going into the large intestine. So this is where the ileum leaves off right here. So we're missing all of the small intestine in here. Where the ileum is going to merge with the cecum, or I guess continue with the cecum because it's still all one big tube, is at the ileocecal valve. So this opening right here is where the ileum dumps into this big pouch right here, which is called the cecum. This little thing hanging off right here is the vermiform appendix. So that's your appendix right there. So this is going to travel up, across, down the left side, and then it's going to form this S curve and then empty through the rectum and the anus. So that's the direction that contents are going to travel, is up the right side, across, to the left, and then down the left side. So sometimes you can tell that your appendix is going bad if you have lower right quadrant pain, because that's where this vermiform appendix is. So the colon is a continuation of the cecum here. And we have the ascending colon, the transverse colon, and the descending colon. And then we have the sigmoid colon. And like I said, the rectum and the anus. So the muscular wall of the large intestine has a modification in it which helps things move through the colon, and it's called the Taenia coli. And it's the Taenia coli is basically this muscular band that's on the outside of the large intestine here. And there are little pockets, and these pockets don't go all the way through, the walls don't go all the way through, so these aren't complete segments, but there's these little pockets along the large intestine which are called haustra. So some people like to think of they're little poop houses. So by the time you're getting into this area, the large intestine, its job is to fine-tune your poop and pull out the water that you need and keep it in your circulatory system and excrete what you don't need. So these haustra sometimes give the poop this shape when it comes out. But again, there's just these little pouches on the outside. Back to this model, here is the cecum, and it's kind of small in there, but the ileocecal valve would be right here. This is the vermiform appendix. And then this is the ascending colon, the transverse, the descending colon, the sigmoid colon is right here. And this grayish, light gray line on here is the Taenia coli. And you can see the little hostrum, or the little poop houses. And you can see the rectum and the anus here too. So the rectum is kind of the last resort, the last chamber that poop is held before you poop it out. And the anus is obviously where the poop comes out.